A new study released on Monday showed that 2019 was yet another year of record setting ocean warming, with water temperatures reaching the highest temperature ever recorded. So, this is, of course, following a trend, the last 5 years, of course, being the hottest years on record. And every year seems to be getting hotter than the next. Now, the study was undertaken by an international team of about 14 scientists who just looked at temperature data going back to the 1950s. So they looked at recorded temperatures from the ocean's surface down to about 2,000 meters or about 1.2 miles. So not only did they find that we have the highest ocean temperatures ever recorded, they also found that the oceans are warming at an increasing speed. Now, Kevin Trenberth, senior scientist in the climate analysis section at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, said, quote, of warming, the upward trend is relentless. And so we can say with confidence that most of the warming is man-made climate change. Well, and how do they know? Well, it's because of the rate of warming. Now, the study showed that while the oceans warmed steadily between the years of 1955 and 1986, warming accelerated rapidly just within the last few decades. These numbers are astounding, by the way. Between 1987 and 2019, ocean warming was 450% greater than during the earlier time period. So you've had a 450% increase in the rate of warming. That is disastrous. And by the way, matches the increased usage of fossil fuels around the world. China using more fossil fuels, India, Russia, and of course, the United States as well. Now, Lijiang Cheng, the paper's lead author and associate professor at the International Center for Climate and Environmental Scientists at the Chinese Academy of Scientists, said that 100% of this rise is, quote, man-made. There are no reasonable alternatives aside from the human emissions of heat-trapping gases to explain this heating. Adding that to reach this temperature, and again, these numbers are going to blow your mind, the ocean would have had to take in 228 sextillion joules of heat. So now let me put that in perspective here. Chang explains that the Hiroshima atom bomb exploded with an energy of about 63 billion joules. Now, the amount of heat that we have put into the oceans in the last 25 years is equal to 3.6 billion Hiroshima atom bomb explosions. That's equivalent to dropping roughly 4 Hiroshima bombs into the ocean every second for the last quarter of a century. Jeez. And it gets worse, as I keep mentioning. The rate of warming is increasing. In fact, John Abraham, one of the authors of the study and a professor of mechanical engineering at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota, adds, we are now at 5 to 6 Hiroshima bombs of heat every second. Yikes. So, look, the study explains that since 1970, that more than 90% of the planet's excess heat went right into the oceans, which explains the rate of warming, of course, while less than 4% was absorbed by the atmosphere and the land, which is why, of course, on land, we haven't actually seen the worst of it. That said, the increase in power of the storms, which, of course, look, scientists can't really say that climate change, creates more storms, but it does have an impact of those storms. They say, and this is Abraham says, if you want to understand global warming, you have to measure ocean warming. And again, higher temperatures due to climate change can make storms wetter and more dangerous. I was going to go to a quote, Trump quote here. Ocean water. It's the wettest from the standpoint of water. Oh my God. This is who we have leading the United States, by the way. The guy who throws, paper towels at other people. This is, here you go. It's ocean water, big water, ocean water. Oh dear God. All right, more horrible news. Now, rising temperatures also mean ocean waters have less oxygen and are becoming more acidic. That's where we're seeing more dead zones, and also why you're seeing coral bleaching. And so, corals all around the world are also dying. Coral reefs, and those are big places for obviously wildlife in the oceans. And so, warming is also changing currents and altering weather systems at a speed, this is important, at a speed that wildlife cannot keep up with. Well, now, if wildlife can't adapt, then that wildlife will die out. That's a big problem. And so, look, I know that there are people out there that are like, well, the climate has always changed. And I'm using the Trump voice because basically it's the same thing, right? Climate's always changing. That's true. Climate does always change, right? The issue with man-made climate change is that it's the rate of which it's changing. We are changing it more rapidly than we can adapt to it. And when that happens, and I just said it, for animal species and plants, if it changes too rapidly, more rapidly than we can adapt to it, then we also die. And so our emissions that we release into the atmosphere every single day, tons and tons of it, are making the atmosphere, the climate change faster than any of us on the planet can actually adapt to it. And that is the major problem, right? And we need, and that's why we need to do something about it. That's why we need to slow the rate of warming by reducing our emissions. We can't undo the damage that's already been done. But what we can do is slow the rate of warming so that we have more time to adapt to what is to come. Warmer temperatures, stronger storms, and other issues associated with this. Okay. And so, let me get back to another quote here by Chang. He said, we will see a continuous increase in ocean heat content in the century, even if we can keep the global mean surface temperature rise well below 2 degrees Celsius. So now that 2 degrees Celsius is basically the goal, or was the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, Donald Trump, genius in chief, pulled us out of that deal. And by the way, not a lot of countries are following it anyway, because it was a non-binding resolution. And so, look, he said, if we can reduce emissions, we can reduce the warming level and then reduce the associated risks and losses. We cannot eliminate any of those things, but what we can do is make it a little bit easier for us to be able to adapt to what is to come. And that is rising temperatures, rising sea levels, increased immigration or migration from places that are more heavily affected, reduced food, growing areas. Reduced biodiversity. All these things are going to affect us. And really, it's our choice to figure out how much it's going to affect us through our actions. Now, finally, Chang says this, quote, if the leaders of the world change course, a revolution could take place over about 15 years. And that's supposed to be the hopeful part of this. This would require, of course, the leaders of China, the US in particular, along with Europe and India and everywhere else, to take a strong leadership role and set the stage for the rest of the world to follow. And that, of course, is being very optimistic here that they would actually be interested in doing that kind of change. And this is where I get super depressed, because I don't see this happening. I really don't. We have a danger right in front of us. And the president believes windmills cause cancer. He's railing about windmills. He's railing about water standards and toilets that you have to flush 10 to 15 times. We're doomed. We're doomed if Donald Trump has another, and not just Donald Trump. We're doomed if Joe Biden gets in, because Joe Biden is, yes, he's going to follow the Paris Climate Agreement, which is going to reduce emissions by 2030, right? We need to do something. We need to do something now. Unless you're coming with a Green New Deal to completely transform our energy system as soon as possible, then we are screwed. we are screwed. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.